Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Q&A, Dispelling Myths About Purchasing Hardware from a Third-Party Provider. If you have any questions for our panel today, you can put them in the Q&A section, and we will go through as many as we can. This is a live Q&A, and it's being recorded, and everyone will receive a follow-up email with the recording. If you have any issues during the event at all, you can email our team at events@serviceexpress.com. We'll be monitoring that inbox, and we'll be able to help you out. We're excited to have you join us today, and I will now up to Kyle, our infrastructure sales manager here at Service Express, and he'll get things started for us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle, and welcome everyone. Yes, my name is Kyle Bibby, and I am the infrastructure manager here at Service Express. I'm going on my 9th year here. And first and foremost, so thank you so much for joining us here today. We're going to be spending some time talking about myths and frequent questions people have when looking to upgrade their data center hardware with a TPM provider. And to help us through that conversation, I'm joined by some true subject matter experts. We have Jake Blau, Dan Postema, Steve Mullen. But before I let them introduce themselves, it's my hope that we can make this a very interactive session. We already have some submitted questions that we'll start with. And please also utilize the Q&A feature. I'll do my best to keep up with it. Okay, so with that, let's do some quick introductions. Dan, would you mind starting us off?
Surely. Good morning. I'm Daniel. I'm an infrastructure sales consultant at Service Express. I've been with the organization a little over 8, going on 9 years. Excited to be here. Jake?
Jake Blau, Chief Technology Officer. I've been with Service Express slightly longer, but I made sure to be in front of Steve because his number is more impressive. I've been with Service Express 24 years.
Great. Morning, good day. Steve Mullen, part of our infrastructure hardware team. And as Jake said, I'll take the old man role, 32 years at Service Express. So happy to have people join and excited for our discussion today.
Holy cow. Yeah, a lot of experience here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Okay, so let's get started then. We do have some questions that were already submitted. The first one of them being, why choose TPM over an OEM when looking to do an upgrade or a refresh? Jake, I'd like to pitch this one over to you, and perhaps you can also use that as a chance to expand upon why a TPM provider such as ourselves would be selling hardware in the first place.
Yeah, I'll kind of start in there, and Steve might give some other historical color, being he was our first infrastructure consultant way back when. In our lives, we have always buying choices. And there's some items that you would always buy new directly from a distributor or manufacturer, like toasters or a mattress. There's certain things that you don't necessarily normally buy new, like cars or bicycles or houses. And we saw a very long time ago that there was a big opportunity for people that didn't need brand new, didn't want brand new, or didn't want to spend the capex for brand new. And so we've always had this offering, which fits great with people that need to save money in their budgets. They still want high quality equipment. They still want options, or they want different technology options. They don't want the brand new thing. They want something that's a year or two old, where it's going to be more economical, but it's still going to fit capacity and performance. I don't know, Steve, anything to add there of back in our glory days selling back upgrades?
No, it's good. So I think one thing that Service Express, I think we pride ourselves in, is we do stay very connected to all of our customers with biweekly, monthly, bi-monthly meetings. Really the whole, hey, can Service Express help us here, came out of customers saying, hey, can you help us, with selling hardware? You service the gear, kind of makes sense that you guys would upgrade it. So a lot of what we do today has really come from listening to our customers, filling needs that they've come out to Service Express and said, hey, we'd love to partner you in this area. Can you help us here? And so I think that's really where this kind of evolved from, for sure, was just really customers asking us, can you do this? And, we said, yes, we can. And we've taken that, taken that flag and ran very far with this. So it's been fun.
Great. Thank you both. Another question that was submitted already had to do with logistics. So what are the logistical differences in lead times for delivery when looking at a provider such as Service Express versus the manufacturer? Dan, would you mind if I pitch that one over to you? Speak to that a bit.
Yeah, totally fine. Logistically speaking, what we're quoting, we traditionally have in inventory. So if I'm going to quote a server, it's something that we're going to build to order. So it's not going to be sitting on the shelf pre-configured. But that being said, I would estimate about a 2 to 2.5 week lead time to ship within reason. I mean, Steve recently sold like 104 servers. That takes a little bit longer to put together. Sometimes, a couple weeks, depending on what gear we need to bring in on top of what we have on our shelves. But we are our own largest vendor through our ITAD program, through our vendor network. I think we supply, and Jake, you can correct me, but 40 to 50% of our own parts for the service division. But we also take a lot of our own parts for the sales division. So we're able to be equipped to get equipment quickly, but also equipment that is, original to the manufacturer that we sell it in. And then we're able to bundle all that with our support. I don't know if you guys would add to that.
No, I think you got it.
Yeah, it's good. No, I think you're right. I mean, I feel like in general, we're trying to understand what is the expectation for delivery. A lot of reasons why customers do, I think, come to Service Express is that, hey, I've ordered this from my Cisco rep, my whatever HP VAR, and they're telling me it's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. I don't have that kind of lead time. What do you guys have available? And as Dan said, I think we do a pretty good job of configuring product based upon what we do have available, to deliver a lot quicker. So definitely an area we kind of pride ourselves from is to deliver a lot faster than some of these longer lead times we're seeing out there.
Well, Dan, a follow-up question I would have for you there. You had mentioned that we're our own largest vendor. We have things on the shelf. We have an ITAD program. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit to the condition and some options that folks have that we're typically able to offer. Would you mind speaking to that a bit?
Yeah, surely. The most common one that we're going to see is just going to be outright refurbished. Refurbished to Service Express would mean previous usage. So we have a large ITAD program. We're bringing in full systems down to just drives on a daily basis, and a full team of guys in our lab that are taking those systems apart, breaking them down, testing the parts to make sure that they're up to our standards before we spare those on the shelf. Then every vendor has some form of a recertification process that we work with. So you've got Hewlett Packard has HP Renew and HP New actually on the free market. You've got Cisco that has a Cisco Access or SmartNet eligible program. And then you have Dell, which is Dell Recertified Refurbished. So each of those either come with some form of a base manufacturer warranty that we can then uplift with our support. In Cisco's case, as an example, it's eligible for SmartNet, but usually we can put our support on it. And then for HP, it can either be Renew, which would mean some form of previous usage, or HP New, which we can sometimes offer depending on requirements. And there it would also have a level of a base warranty. And then there's just outright new. So that would be from a VAR. We do have an IBM partnership as a company, so we can have new power systems, new flash systems, or we recommend buying from an OEM. So if you need like a new firewall, usually we don't want to get into the security stuff because I don't want a call at 2 a.m. about a ransomware attack for a firewall that I sold. I would prefer that we keep, you guys much safer on that forefront.
If you think about it in terms of the other places in our life where the supplies like vehicles, you can buy a brand new car directly from the dealer. You can buy a certified pre-owned directly from the dealer, which carries some sort of warranty. You can buy a used car from a dealer or a used car from an independent that has been refurbished in some way, shape, or form. There's a really wide spectrum. And we found as we've talked to customers, it's surprising how many don't know that that's an option. And they make all of these servers at the same factory, to the same standards, to the same quality. And we know from all of our data and analytics over 25 years that the quality and the stability of those products in a certified pre-owned or a refurbished exactly match what they are when they're new. They're not really any different. The only thing different is the investment is a lot lower when you look at a certified pre-owned or a refurbished, like a renew, versus going brand new.
One word or phrase that gets tossed around when we talk about all these different conditions and where it comes from is gray market. Like, that's something that we get asked a lot. Like, is this gray market? Where is it coming from? That sort of thing. Jake, would you mind kind of talking about how we think about that terminology?
Yeah, I absolutely love it, because it was invented by manufacturers to scare people. The real definition of gray market is any product that was not purchased through the official channel of the manufacturer. So if a company bought a firewall, never took it out of the box, and then you bought it from that company, it would be considered gray market, which is scary because it's, gray is halfway to black market. But it doesn't really mean anything. What's important in this business is that you are getting it from the same, region that it was manufactured in. So it has the proper licensing, it has the proper serial numbers that are going to show up correctly when you put them into your portal for support. That's what's really important. But gray market is just a boogeyman out there to say, oh, there's something possibly wrong with that. There are certainly vendors out in the world, and we vet all of our vendors very specifically. There are certainly vendors out there that will import gear from from another country. They'll bring it into the United States and then they'll try to resell it. We avoid that at all costs, if anything else, because the right thing to do is to make sure the provenance of that hardware is from the region that you're working in and selling in. But gray market is a bit of a red herring that I've been trying to fight against for, 20 years.
Dan, Steve, anything additional to talk with through that?
That was exactly the case. Exactly. It is kind of a, it's a negative term, but it is just, you're right. It's the OEMs, I think, trying to create a little bit of FUD with the kind of product. So it's not sub quality product. It's just not, this brand new is really the only thing. Yeah. So Jake did a good job.
Well, undoubtedly there are certainly some benefits with working with a TPM provider for a hardware purchase, but it's not for everyone, and it's not great for every situation, like we just talked about. So Steve, I'm hoping you can actually expand upon that a bit. If I'm an IT director and I'm looking to add equipment to my environment, what sort of things should I be considering, like conditions or other options to explore?
Yeah, good. This is a big one. I'll try to keep it very high level. Really, there's for us, I think a lot of it, when we talk to customers, they say, hey, we need to refresh or upgrade or do something. I think a lot of times our first question is why. What's the reason behind this? Is it just, hey, my environment's getting aged, starting to fail quite a bit. I just can't run the application anymore. Maybe it's, hey, we moved a bunch of stuff to cloud and we actually scaled back and I need to kind of really shrink my footprint. Obviously, a hot topic today is, holy crap, I just got my VMware renewal and it went up 3x. How in the world can I reduce my core count? Or in some cases, we'll find out like you don't really need to upgrade at all, actually, or you need to refresh it all. You just need to upgrade. So let's kind of pick those apart. So when it comes to, hey, I just need to get a little bit newer. What I have works. It's just too old. That's a great fit for probably not brand new technology. Let's go a few generations newer. Let's buy you another 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years of life cycle at a fraction of the cost of a full-blown refresh, brand new. If it is, in fact, like, hey, I've got older machines, I really need to reduce my core count because my Broadcom license is so high. I think at that point, we will look at a new solution, current generation, cutting edge technology to really reduce that footprint, drastically. The other part too is, obviously is the big question is, what is the budget? Customers are always a little apprehensive to tell a seller what my budget is. You're like, oh, I'm gonna tell you 10 grand. You're gonna quote me $99.95. I'm like, no, the goal with trying to understand the budget is really, how can we get you the most, product for what your budget can contain? Or maybe you've got this much budget and that's way more than needed. Can that budget money be used elsewhere? So different conditions for sure comes down to, those kind of factors. Why are you upgrading? How much money do you really have to spend? Going back off what Dan shared a little bit earlier, if this is a core environment, in your networking world, if this is firewalls, I mean, yes, like you go buy new or gear that can have OEM support. You start kind of getting into the storage realm, same kind of thing. Really, storage is that gear can last for a long, long time. So really an N-1 solution in storage is great. You can still get a 10-year life cycle out of it, typically at 70, 80, 90% less. So definitely a lot of factors, but I feel like really having a good in-depth conversation. Why are you doing this? And talk through it, short-term, long-term. I think we got to kind of really look at big picture situations with customers, like, how quickly are you going to switch to the cloud, or how quickly you're going to move to a different application. But yeah, those are some biggies I think that would hopefully help narrow down the focus.
What sort of situations would not be a good fit for us? Like maybe you can recall like a conversation that you've had recently where a customer was looking for a particular solution or had a particular problem they were looking to solve, and we're just not going to be a fit for them. And I'm wondering if you could kind of take us through, what led you to that.
Yeah, for sure. Is if a lot of it is firmware driven. For us, so if we're selling a lot of used equipment, a lot of N-1, N-2, some OEMs are, if you don't buy new from the OEM directly, you're not going to have access to their firmware. So let's just say it's storage. So customer says, hey, I want to buy Nimble storage, but man, I really want to keep the Nimble tools. That we're not going to really be able to sell you a used option because you won't have access to that. Same would be for, let's say NetApp has the same kind of thing. And we talked a little bit before too, firewall, devices, any security device, Arista, Aruba, any device that's like, okay, this is protecting my environment. I need to have access to the OEM to make sure I get updates. We're probably going to kind of steer clear of that. And then certainly if there's anything that involves licensing or certain things that, you need to be at a VAR status, let's say it's a VX Rail or some, certain things that you can't just sell, except for brand new retail. Those are definitely devices we're going to say, hey, boy, we appreciate it. Not a good fit, work with your other reseller, or we can maybe even put you in touch with one of our partners directly.
Now I'll throw a plug in here that a lot of what Steve talked about may not be applicable a year from now. The right to repair movement has picked up a lot of speed the last couple of years, and there's been legislation passed in Minnesota and Colorado, and there's possible federal bills coming up in the next year. I'm on the board for 2 different repair organizations, and if you hear about us out on the web, share our content, because that's something that's going to open up IT for everyone, and stop some of these restrictive policies that OEMs have had, because it actually hurts everybody if you can't resell your device, or you cannot buy a device that someone else has resold without a penalty. So I'm hoping that those go away in the next year. But Steve's kind of right on. The important part is we have a very consultative approach, because this is not the majority of our business. This is a smaller part of the Service Express business. We're primarily a maintenance and managed services organization. And we're not going to sell you something that we can't support, and we're not going to sell you something that isn't high quality, because ultimately it's going to be up to us to maintain and manage that device.
Are there any security risks, Jake, with a solution that's like N-1 or even older?
Yeah, another kind of like gray market, like the new one is like, oh, well, there's security issues, which if you're a manufacturer, admitting that your devices are insecure is probably an issue that they should work with. Most manufacturers will release security patches freely, but from purchasing a pre-owned, purchasing a refurbished, purchasing a certified device, we have never seen an actual security issue ever come up in 24 years, because most of the security is above the hardware layer. It's very rare that there's a hardware fix to a security issue. Those security issues exist at the operating system layer, or at the BIOS layer, not even the firmware layer necessarily. And again, they generally have to release those patches regardless of equipment status. They don't make it easy, but it is possible. So from us, we don't really see a security risk. And all of the equipment that we bring in and process, all of it has configurations wiped. It has any data wiped. So that box, when you take that server out of the box, it's like it's brand new from a data perspective.
We talk about monitoring here for a bit. We have a question here in the chat. Jim asks, does hardware sales bring up the topic that we can monitor the equipment similar to the OEM and put it under our hardware support as well? We talk a little bit about like our Express Connect capabilities with monitoring the solutions that we sell.
Yeah, I can start off there because I'm more on the service side than Steve and Dan. Yeah, everything that we sell can go under our monitoring because everything that we can support goes under our monitoring. Monitoring, call home, whatever you like to call it. Everything that we have out there can be put onto our monitoring, which then will alert Service Express if there's any issues with it.
Perfect. And it's a free it's a free service as part of a support agreement as well. So there is no additional charge to monitor your hardware. It's a way really for us. You're kind of helping us. We're helping you help us. It's nice to have something, the machines say, hey, I have a problem, connect with us versus having to have, somebody have to go, oh, I see a problem and I have to connect. So it just saves an extra step, speeds up the repair process for sure.
Great. Thanks for the question, Jim. Okay, so let's, hypothetically, let's just say that someone has chosen to go down the path of using refurbished or recertified, going the TPM provider route for adding equipment to their environment. Dan, a question for you I would have is, where does this equipment actually come from? We mentioned like ITAD and it's on our own shelves a little bit, but where is it actually coming from? And could you talk a little bit about that and the conditions?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to buy something that's N-1, N-2, the chances are we would have it. We have our warehouse, I think 100 yards in that direction from where I'm sitting right now. We've got, I don't know, Jake, do you know the quantity of parts? And it's
87,000.
Yeah.
Something crazy.
Everything from Deck Alpha all the way to the newer stuff. So, if we're going to build something that's older, it might come from there. We have an extremely vetted vendor network. I know we continue to narrow down our vendors. We have rules in place to make sure that who we're buying from go through certain procedures. And then when that equipment comes here, we are testing and making sure everything's up to our standards before we get them out the door. And then other vendors are able to sell us, net new gear or newer gear that we're able to resell on the free market, depending on, the manufacturer, the type, etc. But what it really comes down to is what we're selling is going to be depreciated because that's how it works. As soon as you drive a car off the lot, I don't know, you lose $5,000-$10,000 as soon as you sign that last list. So for hardware, we're able to be 50%, sometimes 90% off list, depending on the manufacturer. Like if I was going to pick on somebody, Cisco's probably the easiest one to pick on. Like 64 gigabyte memory DIMMs do not cost $2,000. They usually cost $200. So we're able to really come in and offer a cost-effective solution that will meet your needs, but also won't break the bank. And we can get it to you quickly and help with everything from just general hardware all the way to a full turnkey solution, just depending on what's needed. Jake, I guess you'd speak a little more to the vetting process of vendors. I'm not as keen to that part of the business, but
yeah, we have a vendor portal that we built ourselves that rates all of our vendors. We categorize all of our vendors by the kind of products that they work with, and then as we purchase from them, if we purchase DIMMs from them and one of them has a problem, that kind of goes against their quality rating. So there's always a quality rating for all of our vendors. If one of our vendors is having quality issues, then Service Express will actually coach them on here's the kind of things you need to do to not have those kinds of errors. And if they do not fix their behavior, they are checked off of our vendor profile and they are no longer in our network. There's about 300 total vendors in our network between Europe and the US that all have extremely high quality. We have great relationships with them. They ship quickly to us. But even if they're our best, most accurate, highest quality vendor, those products are still coming into our lab, where our lab team is putting that solution together, putting those DIMMs into a machine, and making sure that nothing has happened between the vendor and us, to ensure that when they get to site, everything works.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. Like what steps we can take, or like a TPM provider can take for like quality assurance, testing, configuring, that sort of thing. Steve, would you mind kind of talking us through what steps that a vendor like us would have in place?
Yeah, perfect. So these guys hit it very good. So to start with, we definitely have vetted suppliers. We don't just buy parts from Craigslist, eBay, or anything like that. We have very vetted vendors. Fortunately, some that we've worked with for 25 plus years, which has been fantastic. Everything does come through our tech center, our Broadmoor Tech Center, BTC, we call it. We have about 10,000 square feet of test facility for both the engineers that build the machines, as well as the guys that just test parts all day. So if we're pulling parts off the shelf, everything comes in, it is pre-tested before it goes on the shelf. You take that part off the shelf, and that's what you use to build the machines. Everything we build here is like, it's kind of from the ground up. We don't, have like Dan mentioned before, we don't have pre-configured, like, hey, I want to buy us. Everything is like, here's the chassis, here's the proc memory. We're going to build it from kind of the ground up. Everything is going to go through, the OEM. Here's the test procedures. Extended Diagnostics, Dell has theirs, HP, Cisco, everybody has theirs. We have, real live, it's a data center environment that we work in here. So stuff gets tested in that environment. If it's a blade, it goes into our test chassis before it leaves. When applicable, we're going to upgrade it to the latest version of firmware before it ships, or we typically find out from the customer. Sometimes we upgrade it too new and it causes problems. So we'll just like, hey, where do you need it to be? Devices we can't, get the firmware openly available. We're going to make sure we source that from one of our trusted suppliers at that particular version that the customer needs. Through all the mishmash, whatever we talk about, our vendors get scorecard, their scorecard. The best vendors we have are about a 2.5% DOA rate. We're very happy to say that our product, the gear that we ship out, has about a 1.5% DOA rate. Things do break. It's used gear. It's just going to happen. Sometimes things get put in a box and we don't know what happens to it from here to Columbus, Ohio, how many times it gets dropped or thrown around. Things do break. And so thankfully, obviously, we provide that service after the sale. But we're very, very anal about the product for sure. These bigger projects, and really most projects, they're double checked, triple checked. So one engineer is going to take responsibility and say, hey, this is my build. I'm going to put the machine together, ground up, whatever, go through all the stuff. Before handing it off to the guys out back and shipping, they're going to pass it off to one of the other build engineers to go through and vet that whole list and double check. In some cases, even cross check, have a third person go through and just manually, okay, we got these right cables. That's correct. I have, okay, this adapter. Yep. Okay. Whoa, it's missing this little blank bezel right here. Definitely try to push ourselves on quality control. We know this is a commoditized market for sure. We just do our best to provide the highest level of product we can. And it shows. We've got, like I said, very low DOA rates. And we're all, myself and Dan, we're very fortunate. We have customers that come back to us over and over and over again to buy more stuff. They said, hey, the last time I got this, man, it was packaged terrific. It came, it worked. I fired it up. I had no issues. Can you sell me 2 more of these same servers? So yes, we do a great job of running stuff through its rigors before it leaves the dock, for darn sure.
And what's really nice for Steve and Dan is these are going to our customers. It's sort of important to note we only sell hardware solutions to existing support maintenance customers or managed services customers. We don't just sell to everybody on the planet. So in the event something does happen, UPS or FedEx, they drop the pallet, they drop the box, and a device gets damaged. You're within our service area. We have local inventories that are full of parts that probably have all these parts in stock. We have engineers all over the United States, all over the United Kingdom, in the Netherlands and Ireland, that when you do have a problem, we're going to dispatch our engineer, that's a Service Express engineer, who's going to go make that repair. They're going to pull from their local stock. They're going to treat it like any other service call, which is very different than most vendors out there, especially in the non-new market. Is they they would have to call somebody else to come try to fix it, and we can just call our folks to take care of those issues so that they're handled quickly.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, I always like to look at our organization as a service organization that sells hardware. And then if you're buying from an OEM, you're buying from an organization that builds hardware that offers support. So on our end, support's always going to be front and center, and it's something that we invested in heavily. You know, our engineers are W-2, they're Service Express employees. They go through all of our extreme training regimens and then continue to build on that the longer they've been here. Where if you go through like a Dell or a Hewlett Packard, oftentimes they're outsourcing their support, or they don't have parts stocked in the right locations. They might not have physical inventory. I mean, it's kind of easy to pick on people during COVID, but there were times during COVID when I would sell shelves to customers who were trying to get them because they were broken from like a Dell, and Dell just didn't have the inventory, because at some point in the life cycle, Dell is going to focus on building new product rather than maintaining older, dying hardware. So we're in a really great spot where even if I sell something that comes with a base warranty, we're always going to push to have our support on there, because we already had our hands on it. We know the configuration, we know the bill of materials. That's all logged on a profile, for an agreement for somebody, so we can go in and say, oh, it has these CPUs, this memory. We can make sure that equipment is spared, but also it doesn't benefit us, nor does it benefit anybody else if we sell something that's poorly built or has bad parts, because we have to pay to fix it. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure we're setting everybody else up for success, including our own teams, because that's a bad experience for everybody all around.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate that. Another kind of hot topic that I see in the news and we see in kind of the business community right now are green initiatives. Jake, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of the impact of buying hardware in this fashion on like sustainability, carbon emissions, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting when we talk about carbon emissions in our world. A lot of people talk about, the gasoline in your car or the gas to heat your house and electricity and all those items, scope 1 greenhouse emissions. And what a lot of people don't talk about for a lot of reasons is they don't talk about everything else and what it takes to make things. And if you take a server, any given server, a Proliant, a Dell, whatever, 80% of its lifetime carbon emissions are generated during the manufacture of the device, because they have to mine minerals and metals and make plastics and transport them all over the world so that they all end up in one spot in Austin, where somebody builds a server and then ships it to you. Plugging it in and running it for 5 years is almost nothing in carbon emissions, the electricity that it takes. Link on top of that, if you have any sort of green electricity, very popular, it's more, I should say, more available in Europe right now. You're not adding to greenhouse emissions because you're using green energy to power your data center. And so we've really started to have interesting conversations with customers quite a bit in Europe and the UK, but now also in the US, about, well, how do we limit our carbon generation? And one of the great ways to do that is to keep the things that you have longer, which is your office chair, which is your desk, which is your glasses, but is also your data center infrastructure. But also, when you do want to replace, you replace with a product that already existed. If you purchase an N-1 server from another company, you are generating no additional greenhouse gases beyond the transport from point A to point B. In the EU, and I believe the first one that did it was France, 15% of all equipment purchased for the government must be refurbished. And they plan on increasing that percentage every year. It's not necessarily going to hit the United States quite yet, but it will hit here at some point, and that is going to mean that people are going to be adopting more refurbished equipment to fill their data centers or keeping their data center longer. Microsoft came out and said they're extending their Azure infrastructure from 5 years to 7 years. And then Amazon came out and said, we're going to extend ours from 5 years to 7 years. And that's the right decision from a capital expenditure standpoint, but it's also the right decision for the environment. So as you think about your next data center refresh, you can actually get some credit for being more sustainable by looking at a pre-owned refurbished option versus buying brand new. Because deep down, I am a hippie. All right, Kyle, thanks.
Absolutely. Steve, Dan, what other questions do we commonly get from customers that are exploring this as an option for the first time?
I think one of the more common questions are, do we just sell the hardware or can't we do more? Which the easy answer is yes, we can. We can do everything from obviously just a basic configuration. We can set up RAID groups here. We can upload different versions of an OS so it's easier to implement when you get on sites. We have field teams that can rack, stack, cable, help migrate data from one to another. So we can build an entire solution that's extremely turnkey to try to make it simple. Like last year, I helped somebody refresh 2 large storage systems, and we did everything from shipping it in the rack to plugging it in the data center and then setting up all of like the SIFs when we got to site. Things like that are not, they take a long time, but it also takes a very special, talented individual who knows something, like in that case, like a VNX system that's 10-ish years old. We have that knowledge here. A lot of our GTS or global technical services people have worked at different OEMs. We've had people that worked at EMC for 20 years. We have guys that worked at Oracle for 30. So we're very equipped to help, especially with the older equipment. And as new equipment comes out, people always like to play with the new shiny stuff, but you start to lose the talents of people that are able to work on the old gear. The people like Jake and Steve over here that have touched that stuff.
That's good. Yeah, what I'd say is we touched on it a little bit when Dan talked about the different, and Jake as well, the different conditions of product. Sometimes there's confusion there. So if customers are used to just, hey, I only buy brand new from my VAR, like, okay, am I going to get suspect if I buy this Dell recertified or if I buy this HP renew or something like that? So I think there's sometimes confusion with that kind of product. I would say for us is, that's probably a big one. And certainly, so, for us, we're not a VAR status being a TPM. It's a conflict of interest to be a VAR and resell VAR, brand new retail product with OEM support because we compete on the OEM support. Right. So that's probably the biggest one is just making sure, that there's an understanding about what the product condition is. So it's not brand new retail out of the box. In some cases, it may be like new or at least have the manufacturer warranty with it. It's crazy, but sometimes we do sell product with an OEM, warranty attached to it, because that's what's required. But that's probably the biggest thing is just, to not be maybe concerned with some of that condition. Again, the term gray market or whatever sort of buzzword may be used out there just to kind of scare people away. But sometimes the savings is just drastic. It's, if you can do 30, 40, 50% less, get the same kind of product, obviously we're going to back it with our on-site support team. I feel like in this day and age, I'm not talking to too many customers that say, hey, my budget went up and I can spend more on IT. So I'd just say, just don't be scared of those solutions. Certainly let's have some conversation, dive in, what are you going to lose, and maybe nothing. Going with something that's not brand new retail, from an OEM. So that's probably one of the big ones that I think people have a misunderstanding. And just for us, maybe we just don't do a great job of fully understanding the different conditions, for products. So that's probably a big one that comes up quite a bit.
I think to piggyback on that too, one that we've commonly got a lot more recently, especially with Broadcom, is do we have hyper-converged options? How are we able to compete with that? As a plug, we are a Nutanix partner, so we can help resell Nutanix. A lot of people are pivoting to like a vSAN solution. But then a lot of people are also taking that and kind of jumped on the fad train a few years ago and are now realizing that sometimes traditional data center is a better solution than going hyperconverged. So we're starting to see almost a transition back to the traditional data center in some ways. I think when you build a server up to have a bunch of storage, you also realize the controllers aren't really built to handle that level of storage depending on how it is, or maybe you need something more production or enterprise level. So we're just trying to be very catering to the different needs in the data center. Not to say that we're experts on everything, but we also have, customers that are Fortune 1000, and then we have really small shops that are trying to, build a similar solution but on a budget. So we kind of see it all, so we're able to kind of get the pros and cons of each solution depending on the size and the need, if you will.
Yeah, thank you guys. We're kind of winding down on time here. So again, last plug, if anyone in the audience has any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them into the Q&A. If you have any questions while you're thinking of them, typing them into the chat here. I guess one last question I'd have for Steve, Dan, being agnostic to an OEM, being able to sell lots of different products. I'm just wondering if you can kind of take us through maybe some projects that you've worked on recently, some examples of things that we've been able to do for customers.
Yeah, we could. That's probably a good point we didn't really talk about. As you're right, we're not incentivized or whatever to sell Dell over HP, over Cisco, or over Lenovo. I think for us, it's just what's the comfort level for customers. I feel like a lot of times we're going to pivot in a certain direction. Just a lot of it I think based upon what's most available. And what can we get at the best price point? Like Dan mentioned before, it's cost, and then we mark up the cost. If you price out a server and it's an HP is 10 grand and a Dell is 8, then I'm going to pitch the Dell. I'm not going to try to sell you something that's more expensive to make more money. We're going to sell you what makes the most sense in your environment. I would say as far as recent examples, that's probably where it's been pretty common. Customers are like, hey, we really don't care. And we've made pivots to everything. Sometimes it's a pivot to a Dell machine. Sometimes it's like, hey, here's a Cisco box. It does the work. We do shy away from, sort of the lesser names, I guess. We don't really talk about that either. We're kind of boring. We do stay with sort of the name brand product out there. You're not going to hit us up for, some obscure kind of product, because like Jake mentioned before, we service what we sell. So, we're not going to, kind of do a lot of one-off type stuff. So we're definitely going to recommend a name brand, type product, Dell, Cisco, HP, Lenovo, NetApp, EMC. Some of the bigger names that are kind of out there is probably our major brands, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is a lot of VARs are not able to mix conditions of manufacturers on their paper. So Cisco is a great example of someone who won't let a manufacturer sell refurbished hardware. So like a CDW could not sell refurbished Cisco if purchased from like a Service Express. So we'll have customers that want us to kind of mix manufacturers. So you might sell like something that's SmartNet eligible on a piece of paper with some old servers. Like recently, I had a project where someone bought a set of Nexus switches that were SmartNet eligible, but with Dell R740s, which are 2 generations back. So you're kind of able, in our position, to mix and match newer and older generations and kind of cater to the needs. And in that case, you are quoting a core network. So, making sure that the core is safe, but also if they don't need extremely high compute, we're able to kind of cater to both.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Well, I am not seeing any other questions in the chat here. And we're kind of at time here. So Michelle, is there anything else that you'd like to say to kind of close us out here?
Yeah, so we hope you guys enjoyed today's Q&A. So if you have any additional questions, you can email them to us at events@serviceexpress.com. And you can also head to serviceexpress.com/events to see all of our upcoming events that we have and ways you can join us. And then once again, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. And then you will get an email coming up with the recording as well. We hope you guys have a great day.